Hey guys, Christina here, and today I have a look for you at the books we read last month, which was September 2020. We are a homeschooling family with 5 children between the ages of 4 and 12 right now. A lot of us like to read, but we also read books that incorporate into our history and our science, geography, things that we're just learning about at the time. So I'm going to jump straight in. I know last month I mentioned we were reading this book here, Calico Bush by Rachel Field. We finished this book. It was an interesting book. It definitely talks about how early settlers kind of dealt with hunger, with starvation, trying to live out in the elements, and the contention, especially at this time, between the French and the English and the First Nations in the area. So it was kind of a slower book. There's some sad parts to it, but there's some good parts to it as well. So it was a good read. Then we moved on to this book, The 21 Balloons by William Pendubois, I think is how you say his name. I'll show you inside because this one has pictures in it. This isn't the kind of book I would typically choose. Usually I like to choose ones that are more based on fact or events. But this one, it does talk about the explosion in Krakatoa, but it's more kind of magical, fantasy. I'm trying to think how to describe it. It definitely has a lot that explains about the time, things like how people traveled, trains, balloon travel, different things that were going on in the world. So it was good for that, and it was a funny book. We did enjoy this book, so I would recommend it. It was a good one. Then we moved on to Judy by Florence Whiteman Rowland. This is from the Good and the Beautiful library. It's a level 5. And this is about a boy who lives in the Canadian Rockies who he really wants to learn how to read and to write. And his parents don't know how to. This kind of idea, I think it was the 1950s, mid-1900s, about that kind of he's gonna grow up to farm the land, so why does he need to go to school and not help on the farm? But there was so much more to it. There's a couple other stories that go along at the same time, kind of interwoven. And just about life, what life was like. This one was particularly interesting for us to read because we live in Alberta. We're familiar with the Rockies. Some of the names in here sounds like they are places pretty close to us, actually. So just kind of interesting. I like the story. Simple, but deep at the same time, if that makes sense. Then we moved on to Nori Ryan's Song by Patricia Riley Giff. Show you inside here. There's no pictures in this one. This is about in 1845 in Ireland and about the Great Potato Famine. And this book was hard to read. There was a lot of sadness, a lot of poverty, starvation, death, but also some hope in there and how people survived and the real grit and will of people. So it was a really good story. My kids liked it, especially my older ones. I know my oldest, he asked for the sequel because there's a sequel to this one. I think it's called Maggie's Door. So he's waiting for that book to read. But just a good book to explain what life was really like at that time. And when you learn about the numbers of people who starved to death and those who left, it's pretty staggering. So that was a good read. And then right now we're reading Angel on the Square by Gloria Whelan. And this takes place starting in early 1900s, 1914 it starts. And it's about the Russian Empire and the Tsar and the Empress and what's going on with society at that time, what's going on heading into World War I, and it kind of heads that way. It talks a bit about it. We're almost done. I think we only have like 1 chapter left, so we'll be finishing it soon. So far, I really enjoy this book. I've read, I think, one other book, Homeless Bird by this author, that I really enjoyed. It gives detail, so some of it's sad, some of it kind of gives that depth to it, like the royal kind of family didn't really see the true life of people in Russia, but it's still in a child-friendly way. So no problem reading this book to my kids. It hasn't scared them or upset them when they're talking about war and such, but definitely one I would recommend as well. So then audiobooks. So we listened to Journey to the River Sea by Eva Abbottson. This was not what I thought it was going to be about. I thought it was just about a girl, an orphan in England, who had family in Brazil and was going to be sent there. But it was so much more. It's like an 8 or 9 hour book if you're listening to it. And it has so many other stories woven in. It really gives a very good description about the time, what life was like, all these people coming from European countries and living in Brazil, about the Amazon, about the natives, the locals. And I also felt like it really strongly talked about your perception on life. How two people can see the same thing, but they perceive it totally differently, and how perceiving something in a positive way can really help you have a positive experience. So I really enjoyed it, and I think our whole family did. But kind of when it ended, we were in the car and we all went, that's it. So we all really enjoyed that, and that author apparently has quite a few children's books, so I've ordered a few to check out. So then, moving on, I had all my 3 oldest boys who are currently, let's see, 9, 11, and 12. They read some books that went along with our story of the world. So there was Krakatoa, Peru, Chile, Armenia, and then there was 2 books from the Who Was series, Who Was Thomas Edison and Who Was Queen Victoria. So they read all those books independently, again going along with what we're learning about in history. And then my oldest, who's 12, he also read Thomas Edison from the Christian Heroes series. My 11-year-old also read that book, and they said they both really like it. Those books, they've read it, my 11-year-old's read a few, and he seems to really enjoy them. Then he read Percy Jackson, no surprise there, as well as Book Scavenger. It's one we've listened to before as a family, and we have the book now. He read that. And he also read the Wings of Fire series, books 1 through 10. Which he read quite quickly, so I think he really enjoyed them. Moving on to my 11-year-old. He read a whole bunch of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books. I think there's even more here. He really likes these books, and so, yeah, there's one more. He read a whole bunch of these books. He also read Minecraft. This is like a graphic novel. And all my boys, they like to read the Pokemon and comic books and like Lego Ninjago books and lots of those types of books. So then my 9-year-old, he's been reading the 39 Clues series, and he said, what book is this? This is the 3rd one. He said he's read 1 through 3 this month. He also read, he's ordered the next few books in this series. He's really liking them. He also read the Hardy Boys Handbook, which he said was pretty neat. Then moving on to my daughter, she didn't keep a list this month of what she read, but she did read part of this book here from the Magic Treehouse series, Pirates Past Noon, Mary Pope Osborne. We have this whole series, so she likes to go through these books, and she's pulled off a few here and there from our shelves and from lots of early readers from the library. So she kind of reads a bit of everything. And then moving on to me. So I started the month out by reading, I think you pronounce it Ma'ata's Journal by Paul Sullivan. I was pre-reading this book, looking at maybe doing it as an independent read or a read aloud when we do our Canada studies again, and I really enjoyed it. It takes place in Nunavut and is about the transition of life from the traditional and living on the land when they were taken and placed, they had to live in a certain settlement. And then she actually goes to a school in Quebec for a while. So just the whole transitions and coming back to the land after, and I just really enjoyed it. It was very simply written. I would say it's written for preteen probably and up, but definitely for younger kids. It's very easy to understand, very simple, and very educational as well, both historically and culturally as well. Then I moved on to the book by Jessica Strouser, Not That I Could Tell. This is the 2nd book I've read from this author. I think I forgot to share last month I read I Almost Missed You by her. Mixed feelings about it. I like some of the way this author writes. Some of it's not my favorite. And I felt like it was an interesting story, but she kind of jumps from one perspective to another, which can add interest, but in this case, maybe because they're jumping timelines as well, it was a little confusing. It was okay. I'm not sure if I'm going to read any more books by her, but it was all right. It's a story of a suburban house mom who suddenly disappears. And she was at a girls' night the night before she disappeared, and so they're the last, these other women and mothers and women in the street are the last to have seen her and trying to figure out what's going on. So it was interesting, definitely suspenseful at parts. And then I moved on to the book The Last Blue by Isla Morley, or Isla Morley. This was really interesting. I've always found people who have interesting lives really fascinating, and so it's based on the story of the people of Troublesome Creek in Kentucky who had a genetic variance, I guess, recessive gene that caused them to be blue, and some of them were born blue. And so this is a fictional story based on that premise that takes place in Chance, Kentucky. I believe it's Kentucky still, and about this family where some of them are blue and the struggles they have and the way they're treated and this whole story around it. I really enjoyed it. There were a few kind of more adult moments in it. I wouldn't say it's a youth book, definitely an adult book. There's some serious things that happen, but overall a really great story and really fascinating, and it explains why they're blue as well within the story, and kind of how it can be either treated or not treated, and making that decision on how they want to live their life. So really interesting. That's the kind of book I love. That's everything I think that we read this month. So let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these books and your thoughts on them, or what you're reading right now, because I really do love hearing suggestions. A number of these books, for both the read aloud and for myself, come from suggestions from other people. So let me know what you and your kids are reading down below. And otherwise, I hope this finds you having a great day. Take care.